If we press space key, we will jump and we will play the jump animation as you can see, and we only can jump when we are grounded as you can see. So let's get into this. So open up the player script by double clicking on it. Okay, so what we will do, we're gonna go over to update function and we will check. We're gonna go to down and we will check if we press space key or not. Okay, so if input, okay, we're gonna check if input dot get key. Okay, if and we have to pass the key code, so we will pass key code dot space. We will check for space. Okay, so make this curly brackets. So if we press space key, as you can see, if input dot get key and key code dot space, if we press space key, what we will do, we will jump. So we will make a separate function. Okay, so we will make it void, and the for function we have to type void, and we will call it something like jump, and make first bracket and this curly brackets. Before, if it's working or not, we will print out a message on the console. So we have to type debug.log, and we will say something like player jump. Okay, player jump. Okay, player jump, and close that off with semicolon. And whenever I press space key, as you can see, input dot get key and key code dot space, what we will do, we will call this function, and what this function is doing, it's just printing out the message in the console says player jump. Okay, so we will call that function which is jump. So make this first bracket, sorry, I just messed there. So close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. So when we press space key, as you seen, we checking if we press space key, we calling that function which is jump. And what jump function is doing, it's just printing out the message in the console says player jump. So select the console and go to and hit the play button in the top, so we will able to see whenever I press the space key. Okay, so now if I hit play and if we select the console, and if we press the space key, we should see the message will pop out in the console. Okay, says player jump. Okay, so as you can see, whenever I press a space key, it's just printing out the message. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this one. So it's just printing. Instead of printing out message, what we will do, we will jump. So in the player, as you can see, we have added a rigid body component. Basically, we need the rigid body component, and we're gonna set the velocity of rigid body in the y-axis. Okay, so basically we need the reference of rigid body, so we will go to script once again. So we need the rigid body, and we will make it public. It doesn't need to be public, so which is rigid body. Okay, and we will call this one something like RB. So we're gonna go to start function, and as you know, start function get called whenever the game start. So in the start of the game, we will grab the reference of rigid body. We need to get the reference of rigid body, then we can set the velocity. Okay, so we need the reference, so we're gonna set is RB dot get component, this dot get component which is rigid body, we have to type. Okay, rigid body, and this make first bracket and close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this. As you can see, in the start of the game, we just grabbing the reference of rigid body. This basically means itself. So as you can see, we have attached this player script to our player game object. So this basically it means it's referring itself, and we getting the component which is rigid body. As you can see, we just grabbing the reference in the start of the game rigid body. So we will, what we will do, we're gonna go over to jump function. Okay, instead of printing out message, what we will do, we will set the velocity of rigid body in the y-axis as you seen. So instead of printing out message, we will create a vector2, and we will call this one to something like velocity, and we're gonna set this equal to RB dot velocity. As you know, vector2 has a x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, so we just creating a new vector2 which is velocity, and we setting that equal to our RB dot velocity. Basically we getting the rigid body and setting just replacing with this velocity. As you can see, what we will do in the next line, we will modify the one y1. Okay, okay. We're not gonna add any force to the x-axis. When I press space key, we should jump in the y-axis, not in the x-axis. So that's why we will modify the y to a number something like 5f. Instead of hard coding, we need to come over again and again to script. Instead of doing that, we will make a variable and we're gonna set it public so we can adjust in the inspector. Sorry, that will be public and that will be float, and you can call jump force or jump height something like that. I'm going to call it jump height, and we by default I am going to set it to something like 7f and close that off with semicolon. And we're gonna go over to velocity. We will modify the y1, so we will set velocity dot y to jump height, okay. And what we will do, we will set the velocity of a rigid body again to this velocity, okay, velocity, and close that off with semicolon. Firstly, we creating a new velocity, okay, and we setting the velocity to our rigid body velocity. Then we just modifying the y-axis, we just only adding the force or jump height to y-axis. As you can see, jump height, which is by default we selected 7f, as you can see, we're just modifying the y. Then again we're setting the rigid body velocity again to that velocity after modifying the y-axis, as you can see. And whenever I press this space key, we just calling this jump function. And what jump function is doing, we just firstly creating a velocity and then we setting equal to our rigid body velocity. After modifying the y-axis, we setting again that rigid body velocity our this velocity after modifying the y-axis, as you can see. So control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to unity. So in the start of the game, we just grabbing the reference of rigid body. You need to grab the reference of rigid body, else it will not work, okay. So you have to make sure that before you set any velocity to rigid body, okay. So just wait for to compile and you will able to see that, okay. Now if we hit play, we should see whenever we press space key, we should jump in the y-axis by 7 unit, but you can adjust over here. So that's why we made it jump height parameter to public, okay. So if I press space key, as you can see, but as you can see, we can jump as many time as we want, and the velocity in jump height is too much slow, so we will make a bigger number. And what we will do, we will check, okay, if we are grounded, basically if we colliding with this ground, we should jump, else we should not jump, okay. So make sure you assign this ground or whatever you have made, assign that game object, and make sure you have added box collider or any collider to that game object as well, and assign that to any tag. So hit this, click on that in the top inspector, as you can see, which is untagged. So hit this add tag and hit this plus icon, name it something like ground, and save it. Head again to that game object once again and assign that untag to ground. Now we have assigned it this ground as a ground tag. So what we will do, and make sure you have added a box collider to this game object as well for collision detection, okay. So we will go over to script once again and we will use this function, okay, on collision inter 2D function. Okay, this function get called whenever we collide with something, okay. So if we collide with this ground, that function will get trigger or get call, and you can extract info whatever you have collided with by going to this other. Let's example for name tag, as you seen, you can extract info name tag whatever you have collided with. So what we will do over here, we will check, okay, we will check if other, okay, if other dot collider dot tag, if it's equals to ground, okay, ground, and make this curly brackets basically. And as you know, this function get call whenever we collide with something, and we are checking whatever we have collided, if that collider, if that game object has or if that collider has tag which is ground. As you know, we assign it that ground game object as a ground tag, so we definitely gonna collide with that game object, okay. So what we will say, if it's working or not, firstly we will print out a message. So we have to type debug.log and we will say something like is ground, is grounded or something like is ground. Okay, and close that off with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. So we should see that message whenever we collide with this ground, because as you know that function will get called whenever we collide with something, and we checking whatever we have collided if that game object has ground tag. And as we know, we have assigned it our ground as a ground tag. Okay, as you see now, if I hit play, we should see that message will print out whenever we collide with this ground. Okay, which says is grounded, whatever we have typed over there, as you seen. Okay, so as you can see, whenever just we collide with the ground, as you can see that message just printing out in the console. So what we will do, instead of printing out message, we will create a bool parameter which will be true or false. It will keep track of if we are grounded or not. Okay, so we will go to script once again and we will make it private. It doesn't need to be public. What we will do, we will say private, which will be bool. It just means true or false, and we will have to name the bool, and we will call something like is ground. And by default you can set any value you like, true or false, but I'm gonna leave it as it is. So I'm gonna set by default to true. So in the start of the game we can jump. Okay, so what we will do over here, as you can see, if I pressing a space key, then what we doing, we just calling this jump function. And jump function, as you know, it's just adding to y-axis the jump height. So we will check. Okay, as well we will check and is ground, basically if we are grounded. Okay, as you can see, if we pressing the space key, okay, if I pressing the space key on the keyboard and is ground is true, in the start of the game, as you can see, is ground will be true. So what we will doing, we will call this jump function, and after that I'm going to set it to is ground false. So is ground false, so in the next time this over here will be false. Okay, so if I'm pressing space key and is ground is not true, as you can see, in the next time is ground will be false, is ground will be false. So this line will not be execute, because both of these conditions should be true, else this will not gonna be work, because we have using this and, as you can see, if I am pressing the space key and is ground is true, then we just calling this a jump function, and after that we setting is ground to false. In the next time, if I am pressing the space key and is ground is true, but and as you know we set is ground to false, basically this becomes false, and this becomes true. So both of these conditions should be true, this then it will execute, else it will not execute. So as you can see, in the next time we will not able to call this jump function, because we setting is ground to false. Both of these conditions should be true, but as you can see we never setting is ground to back to true, so we will not able to jump anymore. So what we will do, we're gonna go over to on collision into 2D function, and we checking over here if we colliding with the ground or not. If we colliding with the ground, we setting we just printing out the message which says is ground. Instead of printing out message, what we will do, we will set this one back to true, so we will able to jump whenever we collide with the ground. As you can see, whenever we collide with the ground, we just printing out this message. Instead of printing out message, what we will do, we will set this is ground back to true. So we just setting is back to true, and control s to save your code. Okay, so as you can see, in the next time whenever we collide with the ground, we setting is ground to true, so both of these condition will become true, and if it's true, then we calling this jump function once again, and we setting back is ground to true. But when we collide is with the ground, we setting is ground to true, so this both of this condition becoming true, and both of this condition is true, then we calling this jump function once again, and we setting back is ground to false. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this. When we pressing the space key, we just setting is ground to false, and if it's false, we will not able to jump. But when we collide with the ground, we setting is ground to true. Okay, and if we pressing we setting back, so we will able to jump when we press the space key and is ground is true. Okay, so we just keep tracking. So now if I hit play, so by that we will only able to jump once, not anymore. When we are grounded or when we collide with the ground, then we will able to jump. In the not air, air in the air we will not able to jump. As you can see, I am not jumping anymore, but if I am pressing key multiple times of space key, as you can see, we not able to jump. But when we are able to jump, when we just grounded, so we will make the animation, okay, for jumping. So for animation, so we need to select those sprites. So if I go to assets, okay, I need to select those. If I go to player, I have those animation, which is the red one. As you can see, and this is one is idle death and crouch, and this one jump. So hit this sprite editor in the right. As you can see, this is a sprite. Basically there are multiple sprites, more than one, as you can see. So we need to select sprite mode to multiple, and we're gonna choose pixel per unit to something like 16, and we're gonna go over to filter mode, and we're gonna choose a point of filter. As you can see, this is blurry, so that's why we have to choose a point of filter, because this is an pixel art. Okay, and after doing that, hit apply, apply, and we need to cut off individually this sprite. In the top left, as you can see, slice, so click on that and select automatic to grid by cell count, and count how many columns and rows it has. As you can see, it has one row and two columns, so we're gonna select two columns, okay, and one row. After doing that, hit this slice, okay, and hit this apply button in the top, as you can see in the right. Okay, now it will cut off individually. So we need the animation tab, so I'm gonna drag this animation tab over here. If you can find the animation tab, you just have to go to in the top window, then animation or control 6, as well as the animator tab. Okay, so select the player. We need to create another clip, so hit this over here and create a new clip. Okay, and we will name this clip to something like, firstly we will go to assets, and we have made this animation folder, so we're gonna go over to that, and we have created subfolder. We're gonna go over to that, which is player run, and we're gonna name this animation to something like player jump. Okay, player jump, and save it. And we need to drag the sprites over here of jump sprite. Okay, so before that, you have to hit this record button to record the animation. Okay, and we need to drag both of those sprite into animation tab, as you can see. Now if I play, as you can see, I'm gonna move it something like 5, something like that. Okay, and hit this record button once again to capture the animation. So we have captured it. Now I'm gonna drag this animation tab once again down, and if we go to animator tab, as you can see, by default player run animation is playing. So we also need to go to player jump animation clip when we press the space key. Okay, so we need to make transition, so right click on player run and make transition to player jump. Okay, and select this arrow. So we will choose a certain condition. If that condition is true, then we will go to player jump animation clip. So we need to set a parameter, a condition. Okay, in the left side, as you can see, parameter, so hit this plus icon and select bold, and we will say something like jump. Okay, we will call it jump. And what we will do, select this arrow and untick this has exit time, as well as set transition duration to 0. Basically we wanna go to immediately whenever we press space key, we should go to jump animation clip immediately. So that's why we have leave has exit time, so untick has exit time, as well as we set transition duration to 0. And we will choose a condition. If that condition is true, then we will go to jump player jump animation clip. So hit this plus icon over here, as you can see, condition. So hit this, and we're gonna set this jump parameter to true. Okay, if it's true, basically check, then we will go to jump animation clip. Okay, if it's false, we will go back to player run animation clip. As you can see, we didn't make any transition back to our player run animation clip. Okay, so we need to make transition go to run animation clip. Okay, player run, so right click on player jump animation clip and make transition to player run animation clip, and select this arrow, and we're gonna choose as exit time to untick, as well as we will choose transition duration to 0. Okay, so we wanna go immediately, and and we're gonna choose a condition. Okay, so hit this plus icon, and hit this plus icon, and we're gonna set this is jump parameter to false. If it false, then we will go back to player run animation clips if that condition is true. So we're gonna set this jump bool parameter to false. If it false, then it will go to player run animation clips. But if jump parameter is true, then we will go to player jump animation clip. Now if I hit play, and if I set this to true or false, basically checked or unchecked, we should able to see those transition between happening, those player run and jump animation clip. Okay, so just wait for to compile. And if I set this parameter to true, as you can see, we just jumping, we are stuck in the jump. But if I set this jump parameter to false, and we, as you can see, we are going back to player run animation clip. So what we will do, we will control this jump parameter via our code. Okay, when we press the space key, we're gonna set this to true, so it will go to player jump animation clip when we press the space key. But when we on grounded, we're gonna set this to false, so it will play the player run animation clip. As we know, we have chosen that condition. If jump is false, then we going back to player run animation clip. So we will control this via our code. So if I select the player, as you can see, an animator component has been added by default. As you can see, by this animator component, will able to control this jump parameter. Basically, we need reference of this animator component, then we can set this jump parameter to true or false, depending upon if we pressing the space key or not, or if we are grounded or not. So open up the player script once again. In the start of the game, we need to grab the reference. Okay, so we will make it private, it doesn't need to public. Okay, so that is animator, as you seen. Okay, that is animator, and you can call it animator or jump animator or player animator, something like that, and close that off with semicolon. So we will go to start function, and as you know, this function get called whenever the game start. So what we will do, we're gonna grab the reference of the animator as the in the start of the game. So we have to get the component, this dot game get component, basically it's referring itself, which is the animator component. We need to get the reference and make this first bracket and close that off with semicolon. Now we have the reference of the animator. Now we can set the jump parameter. So we will go over to when we press space key, and if we are grounded, okay, when we press the space key, what we will do, we will set that parameter. Okay, so after jumping, we will set that parameter. We're gonna go to animator, and we're gonna set that bool parameter. Okay, and you have to type the same name as you did in animator tab while setting it. Okay, which is jump. As you see, as you seen, you have to make the spelling correct. Okay, else it will not work. So we're gonna set it to true when we press the space key. Okay, so we will set this one to true. So if it's true, as you seen, it will go to player jump animation clip. Okay, and we also need to set back this one back to 0. Okay, so or we will stack in the player jump animation clip. So when we grounded, basically when we colliding with the ground, as you can see, when we colliding with the ground, what we will do, we will set that jump parameter, which is firstly we need to go to animator, and we have to set that bool, which is set bool. We have to use this function, and that is jump. We have to type as same name as we did an animator tab, and we will set this one to false. And if it's false, as you seen, it will go back to player run animation clip. Okay, it will play. So control S on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. So we will able to see when we press the space key, that we setting this jump parameter to true, and if it's true, then we will go play the player jump animation clip. As we know, we have chosen that condition, but when it's false, this jump parameter is false, we going back to player run animation clip because we have chosen that condition. Okay, and if we set this one, so now if I hit play in the top, okay, if I now hit play in the top, we should able to see when we press the space key, we will play the player jump animation clip. But when we collide with the ground, we should able to see player run animation clip will be played. So as you can see, when I press the space key, it's playing the jump animation clip, as you can see in the animator tab. But when we are grounded, we're setting this jump parameter to false, and if it's false, it's just playing the player run animation clip, as you can see. So I hope you get the basics idea of it, how you can set the jump. Okay, so if you so lastly, thanks for watching this video. I hope you get the basics idea of it. Okay, I will see you in the next